I'm Doc Renfro here with a former student of mine made good, Andre Milton, class of, when did you graduate, Andre?
2019, last year.
2019. Man, it seems, it seems a lot longer.
It's been a long year.
Oh my God. Andre was able to get a full ride to the esteemed law school at the University of Denver, where he's now, you've completed your first year or what's
Yep. So I'm a second year student right now in the first semester.
right on. And it's basically one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, beginning with how you found yourself at the University of Northern Iowa.
So it's kind of a funny story. I wasn't sure that I didn't want to go to the community college that was locally with me, but my mom was pretty insistent that I not do that. But so when I was applying different places, just one of my good friends in high school was like, "I'm gonna apply at UNI," and I didn't know anything about it at that time. But I went ahead and applied. Um, And what actually brought me to UNI is on my visit, one of my mom's best friends in high school lives there, Janelle Wilkes. She owns Main Street Sweets and Hertz Donuts there. But anyways, we went there and, they were amazing. I loved, their family, being around them. That was one of the biggest things that brought me to UNI. But then when I got there, I loved it. But that's essentially how I got to UNI. It's just one of my friends said he was applying there, and I ended up applying there.
I love it. Just a happy circumstances.
It worked out pretty well.
Did
Yeah.
you start as a political science major, or how did
No,
you?
and that's kind of tied to your first question. No, I wanted to be a history teacher out of high school, teach history in high school or at high schools. But when I met Janelle, who lives there, she was a political science major, and I I, I found it that that's what I actually wanted to do. Like, just during our conversations with her, she was a political science major there, and also I think got a degree in teaching. Um, but I just through like our conversations and what I wanted to do eventually, I liked history, but only because in high school, political science is taught through history and not through kind of the political science ideas. So, yeah, I started as a history major, and then through conversations with a political science graduate, that's when I became a political science major.
Yeah, it's great. So this is why alumni are so important in conversations like this. One of my favorite things to do as a professor is to catch up with former students, because their influence with undergraduates is so important, as well as, of course, taking the right class that hooks your interest at the right time.
Mhm.
Was there any classes that particularly spoke to you particularly as a younger undergrad?
Yeah, so I guess, the first 2 semesters, which you take mostly gen eds, I struggled kind of not in just doing the work, but in like finding myself at the university and just like, was this something what I wanted to do? Was this interesting? Were the classes I was going to, what I wanted to do? But then I started taking political theory classes with Professor Kogel. And um, even to this day, I think that's why I eventually came to law school, because those classes are absolutely wonderful, and just getting you thinking and critical thinking about like what you see the world as and how your view of the world can take shape. And I think that it went past learning, but it helped me kind of like learn who I was and what I thought of other things just through those classes. And I absolutely loved those. And then I obviously started taking your classes, international relations. I loved those classes. It taught me so much of. It's not exactly what I want to go into now, but it's given me such like a breadth of like knowledge of I can speak on things. And I can speak on things that I probably wouldn't know about if I hadn't taken classes, but it also has helped me in my own kind of realm of like, I don't know, maybe someday I want to get in politics. So I think it's a good overall, at least for me and what I want to get into, to have like an idea of what's going on in the international relations realm. Um, but then I also took some of the classes with Professor Peters, which were more actual like political science based. And then there was 2 law-like classes, which I took. One, which was civil rights and liberties with Professor Peters, and constitutional law with a judge on the Court of Appeals, Judge Thomas Bowers. So those classes, I think, were what kind of brought me to law school because I absolutely loved those classes.
That's great. That's great. And it shows you, I think a lot of people come in and they hear political science and they say, well, what am I going to do with that? How am I going to financially incentivize, parents of course are concerned about this always. And what people think a common misconception is, oh, I'm so limited. I don't want to be a politician.
Hmm.
But see, you start taking these courses and you're like, that's not what it's about. It's about just the things you mentioned, critical thinking, in a broad array, everything from international security to theory to applied constitutional law matters. I mean, our department offers all kinds of choices, and a lot of
Hmm.
times people don't know what they're interested in until they dip their toe in it.
Hmm.
If when I started college, I would have laughed in your face if you said, "Evan, you're going to end up getting a PhD in political science and being a professor." I mean, that was never going to happen.
Hmm.
But here I am. Uh, so what
And I
type of
just want to add on that. I think there's so many individual paths that you can take in the political science. Like, the way I took classes, what's worked best for me. But I think there's so many different ways that you can go through the political science and learn different things and get completely different kind of ideas from different paths that you take. So yeah, political science was a great major, and there's so many different ways you can go with it. Um,
Well, that's
yeah.
good to hear, and I'll remind our audience a couple things here. A, this is our pilot episode. B, there's no script. Andre and I didn't practice these questions or anything. This is unedited stuff, so it's just great to hear that off the cuff from you. Uh, what type of do you have a law specialty yet? Like,
Um, I this might go into a question you asked later, but I want to go into criminal law. So over the summer, I worked for a Denver District Court, which basically deals with felonies done in the county of Denver. That was amazing. And right now, I'm at the Public Defender Appellate Division, so helping the public defenders do cases that are at the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court. So
yeah.
I want to get into criminal law, but I'm also doing the school certificate in constitutional rights and remedies, which is one of the original things that I loved about Denver because once I was reading through that certificate and what all goes into it, it was literally exactly what I wanted to do. Um, so
So
yeah.
does that mean are you looking to stay in the county there to practice, or the state, or are you looking to come back to us in Iowa? What do you think?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think I'll come back to Iowa for a while. But my plan is to clerk after graduation to clerk for 1 year at a court of appeals here. So next semester, I'm actually applying for an internship at the Court of Appeals or Supreme Court just to get a feel for it. But after I graduate, I want to clerk for a year at the appellate courts here, and then clerk for a year, hopefully at a federal court.
Yeah,
Um,
and just for the listeners, those clerkships are crucial in a law student and young lawyer's career. Who you clerk for, if you look at the Supreme Court, for instance, almost all of those people had clerked for a Supreme Court justice before they got nominated. And Andre has already, as a first year student, I think you clerked for a federal magistrate already.
so I end up so that was part of a program. That's where I was going to, but then I ended up at the public defender's
Well,
office.
defenders,
Um,
which is
yep.
no small thing in itself, because you talk
Mhm.
about being overworked and underpaid, and you need good people there for good reasons. Did you get the feeling that the people that served in that office probably were doing so out of a longing for justice more so than money?
So I guess I would compare it to my judicial internship where um, I loved like you said, working for a judge is unlike any other type of legal kind of work. Like you get to do it in a way that you approach the problem with what's the best outcome, what's the right outcome. Whereas on other jobs, you want an angle, you want it to turn out for your client, whereas you might not come with that angle. So, like you said, working for a judge and knowing how judges think is amazing. But the vibes were not the same, I would say. At the public defender's office, I mean, these are people who Colorado has a really good public defender's office. They're pretty well paid compared to everywhere else. Good structure, good um, continuity between all the different offices here. But the people are amazing. Like it's not, I think a lot of them can go and make money other places, but they make a good living doing work that they absolutely love. Right? This isn't work that you can do if you don't love it. And I don't want to work at the trial level just because it's not what I want to get into. I want to work at the Pell Division, but the trial level public defenders have the hardest job, and one of the hardest jobs as a lawyer, and I think a hard job, and one of the hardest jobs that we have, really. I mean, if you think about it, they are just given cases, right? People come off the street, usually with bad facts, right? They have said something they shouldn't have because they didn't know their rights, or a whole list of different things that are um, uh, that go into people not knowing their rights and how they get arrested and incidents with the cops. But these people do their job no matter what. They show up with their client, they defend them, with everything that they have, and they're not on, like you said, they're overworked. But it's just different when everybody loves the job. There's a camaraderie. There's just this feeling at the PD's office that you can talk to anyone because you're all in this together, and you're fighting the good fight. So I absolutely love the public defender's office.
That's awesome. I wonder if you know sort of about the culture or institutional differences or whatever differences between the public defender's office and the state or the I guess the county prosecutor or however that works.
So coming into law school, I watched this TED talk with I can't remember his name right now, off the top of my head, but a prosecutor, and he gave this talk about how prosecutors have a potential to make a great impact in reform and all types of things in the office of the prosecutor, and that's kind of what I coming into law school thought I wanted to do. Um, but the only experience I have with the prosecutor's office is over the summer, where I worked at the judges' chambers, and because of COVID, we had certain prosecutors and certain public defenders, and they did all the cases, right? So 3 or 4 or 5 of them we saw every day. And I guess the difference I can explain. I have one instance that explains it well, where a guy was out on bond. He missed a court date because his mom had a seizure the day before, or something of that nature, a seizure or a pretty serious health impact the day before his court date. And it might have even been the morning of, so like late night into the morning. And the prosecutor at the next court date asked for his bond to be revoked off of those facts.
Did the
And even my
prosecutor
judge, who was a former
did the
prosecutor,
prosecutor know about the health?
yeah, yeah. So it was obviously something brought up. The prosecutor wanted to revoke the bond based off that. And my judge, who was a former federal prosecutor, he saw right through. He was like, "Are you serious? Basically, like you got to be kidding me." His mom had a stroke. I think that's what it was. A stroke the morning of his court date, early in the morning, and you expected him to show up to court. That's just not realistic. And my judge denied that revocation of bond. So yeah, I guess that's just like the cultural difference. And just speak to that, right? In our adversarial system, right? The prosecutors want to convict no matter what. The defendants want to find innocent no matter what, and that's the only way our system works. That if both sides try to go to those, and it's not the only. That's how it works right now in the adversarial system we have. But yeah, I guess that's how I can explain the cultural differences in
Yeah,
the two offices.
yeah, that's a good illustration. Let's see what other. Let's see. Well, how about going back to you and I? Or were there any sort of campus activities or clubs or groups that you were involved in that you would recommend in particular to younger students that might be watching or prospective students?
Um, I wasn't very involved like that in undergrad. I was a part of like there's like a pre-law group. I did that. Um in the philosophy department, they have conversations or coffee and conversations with their department sometimes, so I went to those. But I wasn't too involved in like student groups, whereas like now I'm a lot more involved in student groups. I'm the president of the American Constitutional Society here, which is the largest legal progressive society in the nation. Um, and I wish I would have, the experience I've had with this group is something that I wish I would have done in undergrad. The ACS puts on amazing events with amazing speakers. And not only that, it's a great way to network with amazing lawyers that feel the same way about issues as you do. And maybe not exactly the same. People have differences even in our groups, but the conversation is always good faith and like intellectually stimulating. And all the people are here because they want to be a part of it, right? It's not for the title of or anything. It's that everyone is involved because they care about the group, the issues that they care about, and just trying to push that forward.
Right. So it sounds like though you would say, you know, from hindsight 2020, you might encourage younger students to try to get involved earlier,
hmm
looking back.
Yeah, and it helps you meet people, and yeah, it's just I think it's a great way to be involved. That I wasn't as much in undergrad that I wish I would have been.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, let's see. What else do you think we should hit on? Hell, this is the pilot. We can do whatever we want. Experiment. If I do something good, I'll probably hear about it maybe. But if I screw something up, I'll definitely hear about it. So this is all just practice to see what happens as we continue the Panther Political Science podcast in the future. So I again really appreciate you being the first volunteer to come on. It's so far a great talk as far as I'm concerned. Um, I don't know anything you miss about being in the Panther community.
Well, I got two things that I kind of would like to add. One, yeah, I do miss Cedar Falls. Um, I think it's a great place to go to school just because it's so close. Like everything's right there. I do kind of miss that you can walk literally anywhere. Whereas that's not true of Denver. I miss not having traffic literally all the time everywhere. Um, and a 13-minute drive turning into like a 30-minute drive.
Mm.
But yeah, in terms of an undergraduate institution, I loved UNI and the opportunities that it provided me as far as that goes. But also, I wanted to mention that you said you'd never see yourself as a professor, and I think that's true of me in law school. Right? In high school, I wasn't sure that I wanted to go to college. Even I graduated high school with like a 2.2 GPA. Then I came to UNI. I think after my first year, I had like a 1.7 GPA. Then like I said, I started taking classes that like were more I cared about. Got my GPA way up. And as I wouldn't even say until my junior year probably I wasn't even thinking about law school or like what the process was like. And you know the political science department helped me a lot with knowing what I needed to do and having events that like kind of told me kind of what kind of different things I needed to do and how to get ready for the LSAT and a bunch of different things. So yeah, just constantly be thinking about what you might do in the future as you go through UNI. It might change over time, but yeah.
Right on. I can't think of anything else. I've probably taken too much of a young law student's busy schedule. I know our undergraduates probably think they're busy, but wait till law school. Hopefully, we'll train you up and get you ready, and then the students can take it from there. So, Andre, once again, I appreciate your gracious use of your time on this, and I hope to keep in touch with you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you later.